You notice things most people move past without a second thought. The half-second delay before someone responds. The way their tone shifts when a certain topic comes up. The difference between what they say and what they mean. It's subtle, almost invisible, but to you it's loud. And once your mind picks it up, it doesn't let go. It starts connecting patterns, replaying moments, filling in the blanks. From the outside, nothing seems unusual, but inside it's constant. A quiet stream of observation that never really turns off. And over time, that awareness starts to feel less like a strength and more like something you carry alone. There are moments that should feel simple, but never really do. Conversations that look effortless on the surface, yet feel layered underneath. While others stay present, you find yourself slightly removed, noticing how someone avoids a question, how another person forces a laugh, how the energy in the room subtly shifts. It's not something you try to do, it just happens. Your attention moves beneath the surface automatically, and instead of just experiencing the moment, you start interpreting it. This kind of awareness usually doesn't come from nowhere. In psychology, there's a concept called hypervigilance. It often develops when someone spends a long time in environments where emotions were unpredictable or difficult to read. The brain learns to stay alert, scanning for small signals that might hint at what's really going on. Over time, this becomes automatic. Not a conscious choice, but a pattern the mind falls into to feel safe. And even when life becomes calmer, the pattern doesn't just disappear. It stays active, still searching, still analyzing, even when there's nothing to protect yourself from. At first, it can feel useful. You understand people quickly. You pick up on things others miss. You sense tension before it becomes visible. But gradually, that same awareness expands beyond its original purpose. It doesn't just notice what matters, it notices everything. Every pause, every word choice, every shift in behavior. And the more information your mind collects, the harder it becomes to settle on one clear interpretation. That's where the overthinking begins. Not because you're trying to complicate things, but because your brain has learned to look for patterns everywhere. Another idea from psychology explains this. The brain is wired for pattern recognition. It constantly tries to make sense of incomplete information by filling in gaps. For someone who is highly aware, this system becomes more active. It doesn't wait for full clarity. It builds possibilities, multiple meanings, multiple outcomes, and suddenly one simple interaction can turn into 10 different interpretations, all competing for your attention. That's why conversations don't always end when they're over. They continue in your mind. You replay what was said, how it was said, what it might have meant. You question your own responses, wondering if they came across the way you intended. And even when nothing was actually wrong, your mind keeps searching for something you might have missed. Over time, this changes the way you express yourself. Instead of speaking freely, you begin to filter. You think about how your words will land, how they might be misunderstood, how they might shift the dynamic. You adjust your tone, your timing, your reactions. Not because you're being inauthentic, but because you're aware of too many layers at once. And that awareness creates a quiet distance between what you feel and what you allow yourself to show. It becomes easier to observe than to participate. Easier to understand others than to be understood. You notice their insecurities, their patterns, the things they don't say out loud. But when it comes to you, things feel simplified. People assume you're overthinking or being too sensitive. Words that don't quite match the complexity of what's actually happening inside your mind. And after a while, explaining it starts to feel pointless, so you don't. You just carry it quietly, and that's where a certain kind of loneliness begins. Not the kind that comes from being alone, but the kind that comes from feeling slightly out of sync. Being present, but not fully connected. Like there's a layer between you and the rest of the world that no one else seems to notice. And yet, this same awareness holds something deeply valuable. It allows you to see beyond the obvious, to pick up on emotions that others overlook, to understand people in ways that go deeper than words. It's the reason you can feel the atmosphere of a room, the reason you sense when something isn't right, even when everything looks fine. There's depth in that. Real depth. The difficulty comes when that depth turns inward without pause, when every thought leads to another and every feeling gets examined from every possible angle. The mind becomes a place that's always active, always searching. Even moments that should pass naturally start to linger. Conversations echo longer than they need to. Small details grow into bigger questions, and even in stillness, your mind keeps moving. There's a quiet shift that happens when you start allowing some things to remain unfinished. Not everything needs to be fully understood. Not every signal needs to be decoded. Some pauses are just pauses. Some reactions belong to the other person, not to you. Letting those things exist without attaching meaning to them feels unfamiliar at first, almost unnatural, but it also creates space. Awareness doesn't disappear in that space. It softens. It becomes something you can step in and out of instead of something that constantly pulls you under. You still notice things, you still understand deeply, but you're no longer holding on to every detail as if it needs to be solved. Because the truth is, your awareness was never the problem. It was the weight of carrying everything you notice without rest. When awareness stands alone, it turns into overthinking. But when it's balanced with letting go, it becomes something entirely different. Something that allows you to stay connected without losing yourself in the process. There's nothing wrong with seeing more than others. With feeling more, understanding more, noticing what others miss. That part of you doesn't need to be fixed. It just needs space. Space to exist without constantly turning inward. Space to experience life without analyzing every second of it. And maybe that's where things begin to feel lighter. Not because you've changed who you are, but because you've stopped trying to resolve everything your mind presents to you. You let some thoughts pass. You let some moments be simple. You let yourself exist without needing to fully understand the experience of existing. If something in this feels familiar, it's probably something you've been carrying quietly for a long time. The awareness, the constant thinking, the feeling of being just a little more tuned in than the people around you. And maybe for once it doesn't need to be explained, it just needs to be seen. If this is the kind of space that feels close to your inner world, stay here. Subscribe to the channel and keep exploring these thoughts together. Because sometimes the most comforting thing isn't finding an answer. It's realizing you're not the only one who sees things this way.